The long run is a cornerstone of any runner's training. At least that's what I kept hearing when I got into running at the start of this year. Every running YouTuber that I watched was telling me to do it, and every online training program I saw insisted on it too. And I didn't get it. All I cared about when I started running was going faster at my weekly park run. So why do I need to be running longer distances at a slower pace to do that? I also like to lift the occasional weight, and didn't want to spend hours on my feet working myself into a catabolic spiral and lose all my hard-earned gains. I'd done that once before already. So for me, the long run didn't make any sense. At least, not at first. But I've been on a bit of a journey this year, and it's led me to tear up my fundamental principles of training and commit to both running and lifting. And despite my initial reservations, integrating a long run into my training has been revolutionary. Despite running further and slower, I've been getting fitter and faster at the same time, something I thought would be impossible only earlier this year. And last weekend, my wife and I tried to run our longest distance yet, a 60-mile cross-country run. So at this point, you've probably got some questions you feel I need to answer. Why is the long run so important? How do you even start running further? Would I be able to cover the whole 60-mile distance for the first time ever? These are all great questions. So let's find out. So last Saturday, my wife and I pulled ourselves out of bed bright and early and made our way to the Leicestershire countryside ready for our long run. And at 9 AM, off we went, attempting to cover the furthest distance we'd ever ran. Now 60 miles isn't particularly impressive for serious runners, but for me, someone that only started running earlier this year, that would be a huge achievement. So how did we get to this point, where we could even think about running 60 miles in one go? Well, in early 2023, I started running casually alongside my normal weightlifting training. And for me, at the time, running training meant doing 5k twice a week as fast as I could. After a few weeks training this way, I realised I wasn't getting much faster, but what I was getting was injured. These maximum effort 5ks a couple times a week, alongside my normal squatting, deadlifting and weightlifting, they just weren't compatible. So I started doing a little bit of research and I learned about MAF training, or MAF. The premise was that the majority of my running should be done at low intensities in low heart rate zones. This was meant to help build an aerobic base and improve my endurance as a runner. And as I kept reading, all the articles would highlight the particular importance of the long run. So what actually was it? Well, the long run is simply a workout that's longer than any of your other training runs in a given week. The focus isn't necessarily on covering a particular mileage or running at a given pace. It's just on spending as much time as you can in these lower heart rate zones. I haven't ran much further than 4 miles for years, and I had a bit of a mental barrier every time I was considering pushing the distance. So checking in on Lil and myself as we attempt to run 60 miles, we'd made it to just about halfway. And one of the benefits of doing this long run as part of an event instead of by ourselves was that there was refeeding stations along the route, and we didn't have to carry our own food and drink with us. This was especially helpful considering that the fancy £80 Salomon running vest that I'd ordered, especially for this run, didn't arrive until the next day. But not to worry, I tucked into my scientifically derived mid-race nutrition of non-branded jelly babies and chocolate bars, and we pushed on. Things were going smoothly. So what helped me break my mental block of running longer distances? It was focusing less on the distance itself, but more on the time that I spent out running. Instead of telling myself I was going on a 6 or 7 mile run, I'd go out on a 1 hour run. This had a couple of benefits. I was mentally prepared for how long I'd expect to be actually running, and more likely therefore to stay under my maximum aerobic heart rate. Because on a 6 mile run, if it's raining or you're short for time, you can just run that little bit faster, but you'll be pushing your heart rate higher and higher and kind of defeat the whole purpose of the training run. But on a 1 hour run, there's no negotiation. You know you're going to be putting one foot in front of the other for the next 60 minutes, no matter what pace you run at. So you might as well stay in those low heart rate zones because it's also going to feel a whole lot easier. I slowed right down and paid close attention to my heart rate on my smartwatch while I was running. And I was surprised at how slow I actually needed to go. When I worked out my maximum aerobic heart rate, my upper limit was meant to be 154 beats per minute. So I initially slowed my pace by 30 seconds a mile, and within a couple of minutes of running, I was already over this maximum aerobic heart rate. So I slowed my pace by another 30 seconds a mile. So I slowed my pace again, until I was pretty much running 9-minute miles, a pace which felt uncomfortably slow to begin with, and I felt kind of embarrassed uploading onto Strava each week. But I put that nonsense out of my mind, kept running slowly, and eventually dipped below that 154 beat per minute limit. And I just sat there for a few weeks. And let me be clear, one faster long run is not going to ruin your training. If I was training for a specific time in an event like a marathon or a half marathon, faster training runs would 100% be part of my routine. But that wasn't the focus for me. I learned that your aerobic base is the foundation of your running ability. It builds your endurance so that in the future, you're more able to integrate harder, longer and faster workouts into your training and recover properly afterwards, also reducing your risk of injury. This is especially important if, like me, you also lift weights and you have these two competing stimuluses which don't naturally complement each other, and you need to recover from both properly. And my lack of silly injuries meant that I wasn't having to take unnecessary breaks every few weeks, and that I could be a lot more consistent with my training. Training this way also gave me the physical reserve to keep going with my weightlifting. I was able to run and lift side by side, getting fitter and not only improving my aerobic endurance, but my heart health and my body composition too. And also, for relative beginners or intermediate runners like myself, building this aerobic base will also simply make you faster. Over the next few months, I was able to consistently integrate longer and longer runs into my training. Initially once a month, then once a fortnight, and now they're a weekly affair. Over time, I was going out and running for longer periods. And despite distance not being the focus, naturally the longer I was out running, the more miles I'd be covering. Despite only doing faster tempo runs once in a blue moon, during this period, I was able to break my 5k PB and go well under 20 minutes, which is pretty astounding considering that my average running pace at this time was over 2 minutes a mile slower than that PB time. I even did a video about it. As I said, as a relative newcomer to running, even just by covering more miles at this slower pace and building my aerobic base, I was getting fitter and faster. Back to our record run, and Lil and I were closing in on the final few miles.
That's it, 13 miles. We're now in unknown territory.
Only 3 more miles to go and the end was in sight. The beauty of the long run is that it's the most efficient way to train in these lower heart rate zones. The aim of MAF training is to gradually spend longer and longer periods in this golden aerobic zone. And doing this in say one 90-minute long run each week is much better than doing this in 3 separate 30-minute runs in the week. Partly because you're not wasting the first 5 to 10 minutes of every run warming up and below that aerobic building zone. But also, the longer you spend running in one go, the more the body begins to adapt itself and become a running machine, meaning that you're better adapted to running longer and further over time. These are all benefits that I've already started feeling. I'm enjoying my running so much more, and the sense of progress that I'm getting is really satisfying. I feel a lot healthier and more energised too in everyday life. I used to be a powerlifter and thought cardio would kill my gains, but looking back, I was just unfit and frankly, a little overweight. I'm also not as strong as I used to be. But to be honest, I kind of put that mostly down to the double whammy of a shoulder surgery I had in December 2019, followed immediately by a worldwide pandemic where all the gyms closed. But my strength is slowly coming back. Granted, not as fast as if I just focused on weightlifting alone, but it's a compromise I'm more than happy to make. And right now, I'm exactly where I want to be. So were we able to complete this 60-mile cross-country run last weekend and break our own PBs for the longest distance we'd ever ran in a single attempt? Yeah, you're damn right we were. This was technically a race, but Lil and I just treated it as another one of our long runs. This time, the achievement was just in finishing, not in the time that we did it in. And as a result, we weren't too fatigued. This week I've already been back running and done a couple of sessions in the home gym. Something I probably wouldn't have managed if Saturday's run had been a balls to the wall 10 out of 10 effort. But it was just another training run, ticked off the list. And call me deluded, but I followed up that success with immediately booking a 13-mile trail run for February and also signing up for the Brighton Marathon in April. Whether or not that's a good idea, only time will tell. So is the long run essential in any new runner's training program? Well, yeah, I'd say so. And the point is, a long run is scalable. What a long run is for you probably isn't the same as what a long run is for me or what a long run is for all-time marathon great Eliud Kipchoge. Just focus on steadily increasing the amount of time you're able to spend on your feet in that golden aerobic building zone. And soon, you'll be noticing progress. It's inevitable. If you like this video, please drop it a like and subscribe for more running, lifting and general fitness content. And I'll see you again next time.